Greetings, friends. So today, I thought we could talk about the objectification of the male gaze as a good thing, which we've been trained not to think that's not a good thing, right? And this, this is something I've thought about a lot over the years, because isn't it the weirdest thing that, I don't know, for the last generation or so, especially in school, in college, that young men have been taught that it's if you think a girl's pretty, or if you look at a girl and you think she's pretty, that's you somehow violated something. Talk about, and this is not coming from religious people. This is coming from secular cultures, which they're kind of Puritans, right? It's really the weirdest kind of Puritan culture. And then instead of that, what they do is they foist on us the anti-beauty, right? Like Dylan Mulvaney. Sorry, but you see what they do. They promote ugly. Ugly is the new beautiful, right? It's bullshit. And we know this, and this all came to our attention, everybody's attention, I think, recently, in a couple of social media phenomena, in particular, the was it American Eagle ad with Sydney Sweeney, whom I don't even know anything about her. But if you look, she looks to me like a normal, pretty girl. Not, she's not. I wouldn't call her glamorous, and she doesn't look enhanced, if you know what I mean. So what's the big deal, right? She looks like girls when I was growing up that we thought were pretty. And boys, guess what? Boys used to talk. I don't know if boys still do, but boys used to talk a lot about pretty girls. That was that in music when I was a teenager. That in bands. What girls are pretty? What bands do you like? And a great commentator on social media and stuff, Sasha Stone, and don't confuse her with that. I think he's Rhodesian or some white guy from Africa, who spells his name Sacha. But Sasha Stone, for the longest time, she's one of the earliest people who had a website on the Oscars. So she's a dyed-in-wool lefty who left the left because they're nuts. But she said this recently in one of her posts about the Sydney Sweeney thing. She said, "How do you think we reached 8 billion people on the planet? The male gaze and women's desire to be gazed upon are nothing less than the forces that produce the entire human race." Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. Now, whoops, there goes my pen. You can tell it's a professional outfit here. I still use pens. But I thought what we could do is we could go just a little bit through poetry that objectifies the feminine beauty. Because, why else write? And I think there's more to it than just female beauty. I think it also touches on the Platonic ideals of the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? The transcendentals. And that what is revealed in a beautiful, and this is part of the problem, right, is what is revealed in a beautiful person, in beauty, is something that is transcendent, because often the person through whom the beauty is revealed can't live up to the ideal of the beholder, right? Which was a hard lesson for me to learn growing up, but I eventually learned it. But I think it's an important thing to think about. Now, I'm going to read a couple poems here. Because if you remember the movie The Dead Poets Society, which people malign that movie, but I think it's a great movie. And they act like Robin Williams' character was the bad guy because he encouraged a kid to get in, to be in the Midsummer Night's Dream, and the guy's dad was an asshole, and he could have just let the kid be in the play, right? But no, he had to be a prick about it. And but in the movie, toward the beginning, when Robin Williams' character is meeting with his students at this all boys private school, and they say, "What's poetry for?" And one of the things he says, "It's for wooing women." right? And because the boys all are trying to give some kind of academic answer to express our feelings, In my experience, I was kind of a weird kid. And I think what this is all connected. Stay with me. That so if we have the objectification of the male gaze, that's one thing. Now, of course, we know it can go out of hand, right? And it can become indecorous. But that's where chivalry comes in, right? Another thing that's dead. Feminism killed all the fun stuff. I'm telling you right now. They killed beauty. And now they have they killed beauty, killed gender. Now they have men and women's bathrooms. Way to go, feminism! Yeah, go team. But it killed chivalry, right? So there's the code, right? The code of honor and the court of love, right? I mean, even though it was almost entirely gone by the time I was a teenager, it was still there. At least it was there in me, and I thought, that the way to get a woman to love you is to write poetry for her. Which, I was in 6th grade. I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I had a crush on this girl in my class. So you're 12. You're 12 in 6th grade. So I wrote this whole book of poetry to Carrie Messenschlager. And I'm sure it was really dumb. But what happened, it was kind of funny. So 10 years later, I was probably 22. I was with my girlfriend at a Detroit Tigers baseball game, and who do I bump into but Carrie Messenschlager with her date, Captain America. He's like, captain football team guy. And she said, "Oh, Mike, it's so nice to see you. I still have that book you wrote for me." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna let me die right now." So you're with me. And my girlfriends kept going, "What's that book? What? I don't know what she was talking about. Who's that crazy woman?" But that's how I thought it worked. And of course, when I met my own wife, I wrote her all kinds of poetry, and I didn't realize it till years later that at the foot of our bed, there's this wooden box, kind of an antique wooden box, not very big, maybe 18 inches by 10 or 12 deep, 10 or 12 wide. That she kept all the poems and letters that I wrote to her in there. And also, I used to have a gardening business when we first got married, and when I would work in a garden that had roses, I'd bring her some roses home because I had to prune them anyway. And all the petals of the roses are in that box too. So I guess that counts as field research. But I want to talk about John Donne first of all, one of the great poets of the great metaphysical poet. I mean, he's like Heidegger. He restarted the genre, right? And here's an interesting story. So when I was 23 or so, I was dating this girl, or I knew this girl. I've been dating her for only a very short time, but she was convinced I was the reincarnation of John Donne because I had the amorous side, but also the kind of religious or spiritual side. And she thought, you must be the reincarnation of John Donne. So let me know in the comments what you think about that hypothesis. And then actually years and years later, when I wrote my dissertation, and one of the chapters is on John Donne, she must have found it someplace, and she found out where I was working and sent me an email. She said, "How did it feel to write a chapter on yourself?" So I'm going to read this poem by John Donne, which objectifies the feminine beauty. John Donne's wife, actually, or his future wife. It's called "To His Mistress Going to Bed." Come, madam, come, I'll rest my powers defy. Until I labor, I in labor lie. The foe oft-times, having the foe in sight, is tired with standing, though they never fight. It's a pun on standing. Off with that girdle, like heaven's zone, glistering, but a fair, fair world encompassing. Unpin that spangled breastplate, which you wear, that the eyes of busy fools may be stopped there. Unlace yourself, for that harmonious chime tells me from you that now 'tis your bedtime. Off with that happy, happy busk, whom I envy, that still can be and still can stand so nigh. Your gown's going off such a beauteous state reveals, as when from flowery meads the hills shadow steals. Off with your wiry coronet, and show the hairy diadem which on you doth grow. Now off with those shoes, and then safely tread in this love's hallowed temple, this soft bed. In such white robes heaven's angels used to be received by men. Thou, angel, bringest with thee a heaven like Mohammed's paradise. And though ill spirits walk in white, we easily know by these angels from an evil sprite. They set our hairs, but these the flesh upright. License my roving hands, and let them go behind, before, above, between, below. O my America, O my newfound land, my kingdom safeliest when with one man unmanned, with one man manned. My mine of precious stones, my empery. How blessed am I in this discovering thee. To enter in these bonds is to be free. Then where my hand is set, my seal shall be full nakedness. All joys are due to thee. As souls unbodied, bodies unclothed must be to taste whole joys. Gems which you women use are as Atlanta's balls cast in men's views, that when a fool's eye lighteth on a gem, his earthly soul may covet theirs, not them. Like pictures or like books, gay coverings made for laymen, are all women thus arrayed. Themselves are mystic books, which only we whom their imputed grace will dignify must see reveal it. Then, since I may know as liberally as to a midwife show thyself, cast all, yea, this white linen hence. There is no penance, much less innocence. To teach thee, I am naked first. Why then, what needest thou more covering than a man? I love that poem. There's like a lot of, you don't really need innuendo in a poem that's so explicit. But I love the end because the joke is on him, right? You know, I'm naked first. Slow down, buddy. And actually, I won't read any, but he married this woman. He actually, risked everything. He risked financial ruin to marry this girl, and more. And I won't get into the whole story, but later when they were married, he wrote some of the most beautiful marriage poems. A Valediction Forbidding Mourning is one of my favorite poems ever, and extraordinary in that. And you can see with Donne, this is where it's a great example, for my thesis here, because notice how he uses imagery, religious imagery, like the mystic books, right? That there is something divine revealed, and that and it's the strange interaction. Another poem of his. The Elixir, where he meditates on this energy that moves between a lover and the beloved, and probably better than anybody's ever described it before, because it's kind of interesting the way and it's mystical the way that happens. Yes, so I think. What that reveals, part of what it reveals, is a kind of Sophianic splendor, that revelation of beauty, and we participate in it. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, then it can decay, or it can, you can see, find yourself seeing the highest part rather than who the person really is. So let me take a look at George Gordon, Lord Byron. That's a famous poem right here, right? Now, Byron is not my favorite poet in the world, but he is funny. And he's a weird figure. He's kind of he's hard to figure out. He was messed up. But there was nobility to him as much as being a scoundrel. But his poem, She Walks in Beauty, describes exactly what I'm talking about here, in this revelation of beauty that comes with the objectification of the male gaze. Here's what he says. She walks in beauty. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies. And all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. Thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies, one shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace, which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek, and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, so eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. It's well put. And also, you can, the transcendence that comes in there is extraordinary, right? Where thoughts really sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. There's and this is weird. I mean, because it's weird, because we have such a perverted, in every sense, representations of supposed beauty around us that we forget what's real, which is why I think it was in a way refreshing to see the Sydney Sweeney thing, and even some of those, you probably saw those dances with the sororities. They were doing these dances, which let's face it. Boys like to look at pretty girls, and pretty girls like to be looked at by boys. And it's such a joke. I mean, when I was in graduate school, you would have these feminists in class who would just get all uptight about the objectification of the male gaze. Oh my God. And then they would spend 3 hours getting ready before they came to class, and they're made up like, supermodels or something. They got glitter on. Oh my God. I won't get into it. But I wrote about a couple of these, and I think I did maybe I did it when I talked about Eros and mysticism, but it bears repeating. And in two poems I read there, I read a piece of a poem by Kenneth Rexroth, and I read all of D.H. Lawrence, his Gloire de Dijon, the Glory of Dijon, which I'll read again because it bears repeating, and it's perfect. It's perfect to describe what I'm talking about today. When she rises in the morning, I linger to watch her. She spreads the bath cloth underneath the window, and the sunbeams catch her, glistening white on the shoulders, while down her sides the mellow golden shadow glows as she stoops to the sponge, and her swung breasts sway like full-blown yellow Gloire de Dijon roses. She drips herself with water, and her shoulders glisten as silver. They crumple up like wet and falling roses, and I listen for the sluicing of their rain-disheveled petals. In the window full of sunlight concentrates her shadow, golden shadow, fold on fold, until it glows as mellow as the glory roses. And this is a great example of assonance in poetry with its you see what he's doing there. It's beautiful. And a lot of S's, golden shadow, glows. She stoops to sponge her swung right breasts, sway. It's a masterpiece, and it's also, you can imagine him watching the woman, even if whether this happened or didn't happen. You can imagine him watching her and just appreciating the moment, right? She's not doing anything out of the ordinary, even, right? And it's just, it's like light fills the room suddenly. And so I'm going to read another piece from The Phoenix and the Tortoise by Kenneth Rexroth, and I did a show on him a couple weeks ago. You got to read this guy. He's such a good poet, and probably almost entirely ignored these days. So this is, I'm going to read the very end of The Phoenix and the Tortoise, which is a very long poem. It's like, 10 or 15 pages long. And this is another, it's very much like D.H. Lawrence, who was like, Rexroth's, hero, because he turned beauty and sensuality into a religious office in a way. So here he goes. My wife has been swimming in the breakers. She comes up the beach to meet me, nude, sparkling with water, singing high and clear against the surf. The sun crosses the hills and fills her hair as it lights the moon and glorifies the sea, and deep in the empty mountain melts the snow of winter and the glaciers of 10,000 years. And I mean, it's really, so many things kind of coalesce in that image of, and plus in the poem, but in that image of his wife coming up out of the ocean, or maybe they're on the lake. I don't know. I think it's the ocean, and like that famous Botticelli painting of the birth of Venus, right, where it's and what's cool about the Botticelli painting, I think everybody knows it. His model was Simonetta Vespucci, who was renowned as the most beautiful woman in Florence at the time, and she was the mistress of Giuliano de' Medici, not even his wife, right? And Botticelli also used her as the model for the Virgin Mary. I mean, for everything, just about every idealized feminine figure he painted was actually, he used Simonetta Vespucci as the model. And that's kind of cool if you think about it. And little trivia, I think it's her brother, her uncle, was Amerigo Vespucci, where we get the name America from. And last but not least, I'm going to read one of my own. From this here book, Mythologies of the Wild of God. And this one is actually based on the myth or the legend of King Arthur, right? And Avalon. Avalon is the island they took him to heal from his wounds at the Battle of Camlan. And it's like one of the stories that has always lived with me. And this might not, on the surface, immediately seem about the objectification of the male gaze, but it's there. I mean, it's an important part of this poem, because that you can see where he did it and he blew it, right? And I'll read the poem. Avalon. The fragrance of apple blossom, the scent of the lake, the waves lulling the shore with their gentle strumming, the sun a silver sphere suspended in the midst of dawn. Surely never had there been such a sleeping, and to awaken from the consequences of such sins to such a vision, my sister and my mother restored, and my hurts from the battle nowhere to be seen, only sensed in the ever-bleeding wounds of memory. Though even this, they say, will turn like all things to light. The time before so much appears as a dream I have half forgot. But one thing comes to me with both elation and sorrow. When she, arrayed in ivy and ribbons, rode forth on May Eve, her ladies in attendance, a sparkling escort of uncommon beauty, delicate as butterflies' wings, and more ephemeral. Though I wanted to call out to tell her not to tarry long in the forest, I failed to speak, my duties of state and import imposing their yoke upon me. And then all things changed. Friendship, the kingdom, sleep. All were lost and left us to the mercy of duration, to unravel the good and bring our transgressions to violence. Yet in my mind's eye, I see her still, gathering eglantine from the hedges, laughing with her maids in the warmth of the sun, walking barefoot among the fresh bracken and the violets, only to bear the sorrow of the land upon me once again. Okay, so So that's it for today. So let me know what you think in the comments on this very important topic. And don't let people say you can't think somebody's beautiful. All right, take care.